car. I forgot to bring it in. I bought it just and then. All right. Sorry for the delay, but our business meeting ran over. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Town of Bowling Green Town Council meeting, Thursday, April 4th, 2024. We do have a quorum. I call the meeting to order. I have everybody to please stand and follow me in Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I don't see Rick here tonight to give us an invocation, but we will move on. We don't have any public hearing, no delegations tonight. We will move right into public comments. Do we have anybody? I'd like to open up public comments. If anybody wishes to step up to the podium and state your name and your address. And
I live at 240.
Hold on a sec. Set her up.
Okay.
There you go. Thank you.
It's Kathy Self. I live at 243 Meadow Lane. Once again, with the trash pickup. And the trash people came Wednesday. They emptied half of my trash can. They would not empty all of it because they said there was paint cans inside. All I have a picture that I took on the inside of it. Y'all can see is different colored bags. I have like a green, a white, blue that you get like at Food Line and everything. But in order to get down as far as what they did, they would have had to have turned it up and dug through it. When I called up here to the town, talked to a young lady up here, and I was explaining to her what was going on, all of a sudden she stopped me and she said, "You're going to need to repeat everything that you've said because I didn't have the phone up to my ear." Why would she have answered the phone or not said, "Hey, can you hold on a minute?" instead of going that route? So I repeated everything. She said, "I will reach out to them." The trash people said that there were paint cans in the trash can, and that's why they didn't empty it. That's why I went out and took a picture of it. They said, I'm lying, but there were paint cans in there. So when I said, "Hey, can you give me a way of reaching out to them?" they said, "No, we can't do that." So I've not heard anything back from them. I think this is less than desirable. I know we've had problems before with different companies, but to sit there and out call me a liar, that is not acceptable to me in any way, shape, or form. So I did not take my trash can back in until this afternoon, right around 3:30. So I guess I will have to go out into my yard, dump the can out, to put everything in the back of my car, to take it over to the dump, because there's no way, because I had been cleaning my refrigerator out, so there's no way I want all that food left in there for a whole week. Thank you. And I hope we can get this resolved.
I hope we can too, yes. Anybody else? Bonnie, I know you are. I love that hat.
Thank you. I've been very sick. I have to wear hats. It helps me from staying sicker
Yes, ma'am.
in the cold weather. Bonnie, 123 South Main Street. I appreciate being here tonight, and I will echo Kathy. We still need to get trash issues gone away. We need to get them away. Take it away. Don't even have it. Beneficial suggestion. Okay, I have two questions in regard to what's on the agenda tonight. These on the consent agenda, these two text amendment things, both the fencing and the have to do a new ordinance, are you voting on them tonight, or are you just putting them out for public hearing? Okay, that's what I want to know. You're just going to discuss it tonight, right? Why are you shaking your head? He's shaking his head. I don't know what that means.
I think what we're doing is we're authorizing to advertise for the public hearing.
Okay, that's what I thought, but one of them doesn't sound like the other. What I was reading over here earlier. Anyway, you were shaking your head. That's what puzzled me. So you're going to propose public hearing tonight, correct?
We could respond after you're done with the public comments during it's not supposed to be back and forth right now.
So,
This is not a you ask questions, we answer question type deal. We can be on certain things, but we prefer not to. You address your concerns, and then we'll have member comments afterwards in which we may rebuttal what.
so you may vote on them
up here and
tonight?
Say. So, no, is
No, okay.
at public comment, somebody will rebuttal that for you, okay? In other words, respond to what you're asking.
All right, I hope I understand that there will be public hearings on both items. I think I understand it that way. Okay, I'll say my comments for the two public hearings then, on each item. Also, one other comment, I know India is presenting a budget tonight. I hope y'all have carefully considered the new budget for the new year and been very, very conscious of taxpayers when you approve a new budget. And the residents, I'm still waiting for y'all to do something for the senior citizens of this town, which I've not seen nothing yet. So I would appreciate it. I'm still looking for that tavern home cooking restaurant in the town of Bowling Green that I've not seen for years. Right, Gene? We don't have one.
Yes.
I'm gonna tell y'all, honest to God truth, if I was younger, you would see it on Main Street.
All right, Bonnie. Is that
Thank
all
you,
got?
guys.
Thank you.
If I was younger, Gene, I would. Thank you, guys.
Anybody else, please?
Let me turn this off.
That's right, you can,
Didn't go off, Jeff.
thank you. Anybody else on public comments? All right, seeing none, hearing none, closing public comments. Now, member comments, if any of y'all would like to rebuttal any of what we have heard,
I can.
press on, please.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Bonnie. Yeah, I was just trying to keep it on the normal process thing there. Yes, it's just for setting the public hearing for, I would presume, our next meeting. So the public hearings will be then. We're not going to discuss the merits or anything about it. And hopefully that answers that. The budget, I mean, this is the first unveiling of it. We're going to be talking, probably likely iterate some more on it in the time coming. We got a little bit of time before we have to settle on it. That's about it. Thanks again. All right, that's all I got.
Anybody else before we move on? All right, hearing none, seeing none, members' comment is closed. We are now, number 1, staff reports and presentations. India, you want to do 1 and 2 and then 3, I guess, and 4?
Sure. Under items 1 and 2, we have a service recognition for 2 folks in our Public Works Department. Mr. Kendrick Draper is being recognized for 5 years of service. He works at our wastewater treatment plant. He is an operator. He actually has been with the town for 6 years. His recognition would have been in 2023, but that was missed, so we're doing that now. And then Mr. Alan DeShazo actually is being recognized for his 5 years in this month of April as well. So just like to give a recognition and a round of applause for those employees.
Amen. Glad to see some employees hanging around. It's a good deal. All right,
And then moving on to the town manager's monthly report. Enclosed, you have my monthly report for the month of March, which includes some updates on our financial updates in terms of our pre-audit process. We have provided about 53 of those 77 items from 21. We also had our first meeting on site with the auditors yesterday. So they have all of the information, or most of the information they need to begin the official audit process for 21 now. We are still working on documentation for 23, and then we'll be working for for 22 and then 23 and then 24. Still working with Keystone on some corrections to our systems. Also some training with Caroline County for future module implementation. Next week, we'll be looking at the zoning module on the 10th in collaboration with the county. The Public Works report is also attached by Mr. Fortune. Also continue to work with Stantec. Under our intergovernmental section, I've talked about our process forthcoming with Congresswoman Spanberger's office and that CPF process. We're following up with USDA on our audit progress to date, and then continuing to work with the county on various matters. Under government performance, we've met since our last meeting with the Breeze Line Regional Manager to discuss service. Her name is Ms. Tammy Allen. She met with myself and then swung by to see Councilmember Randy at the business to talk about those issues, and she's pledged better service in our area. We've also established an EVA account for the town, and we've received training on posting solicitations to EVA. We posted our first solicitation based on council direction for the utility RFP. Also, you have your enclose your public safety report. And in terms of looking ahead for events, Clean Sweep will be on May 11th and Music on the Green on May 17th. And we are underway for preparations on the Harvest Festival. And I'll give an update, a more detailed update at the May work session. And that concludes my report. And I'll turn it over to the chief.
All right, item number 4, finance. She's not here. Any questions about it to India? All righty, chief?
Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Mayor, members of council, how are y'all?
Good.
I'm just here if anybody has any questions.
Anybody got anything for the chief? If not, move on to Public Works. Anybody's got any questions, concerns of Public Works that India might be able to answer? All right, Community Development Monthly Report. JC, is that going to be you?
Sorry about that. Thank you for your
That's all right,
patience.
sir.
Just at a high level, still working on hitting the ground running, developing process sheets related to permit analysis so that basically staff won't have to go back and look at the code every time, developing a step-by-step analysis for each permit so that we can effectively process them at higher rates. Still working with our U.S. Army representatives at Fort Walker on the IGSA contract. There should be a meeting coming up shortly, and we'll keep council apprised of any movement on that project. Right now, as the town manager indicated in the work session, our highest priority is developing a compelling funding request for the upcoming community project funding with Congresswoman Spanberger's office. Thank you.
All righty, we're on to, anybody have any questions real quick? All right, consent agendas. We have bills. Item 8, item 9, ask for a authorized public hearing for a zoning text amendment. And then item 10, fence ordinance. Do I have a motion to accept all that?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
I have a first by Jeff. I have a second by who? Randy?
Randy,
Is that
yeah.
you? For Randy? Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Hearing none, motion carries 100%. Not seeing any unfinished business in here, and we'll move on to new businesses. Fiscal year 24-25 proposed budget. India Adams Jacobs, town manager, will do a presentation on it, I believe. Gene, you're going to be in the spotlight.
I just pull this back a little bit.
Okay. Okay. So good afternoon, Mayor, members of council, members of the public. Indy Adams Jacobs, Town Manager. I'll be presenting the 25 proposed budget. So taking just a high-level look at our table of contents for this afternoon, we'll be looking at our 2025 proposed budget, taking a look at a high level what the town funds, taking a look at our ARPA, our budget process in terms of our strategic alignment with the 2025 themes established at Town Council's retreat back in January, our budget priorities, budget financials, the proposed budget, and budget timeline, and then next steps. So, town mission. Back at our retreat, you all worked very diligently to help establish a town mission and a town vision. At that meeting, we established our town mission, which was to serve the citizens. After that, we worked on our town vision, and you all did a lot of work really getting to the crux of what the vision should be for the town, and that included being a vibrant, lively, thriving community that is sustainable and resilient, that is regionally connected, that's walkable and connected with connected neighborhoods, a destination for visitors, a place with small town vibe, a village with historic charm, a cultural and business center of Caroline County with beautiful public spaces and streetscapes. Continuing on with that visioning process, some of the questions comes up from time to time, why are we a town? Why do we exist as a town? Some of those primary reasons are for land use control, utilities, public safety, attractive physical assets, amenities and parks, independence and self-government, sense of community, location of services, and commerce and culture, as well as solid waste collection. And again, these were items that you all identified at your retreat back in January. We also discussed values and operating principles, and you all identified several values and operating principles that we should be adhering to as a town and for town staff, which includes transparency, open communication, good customer service, honesty, integrity, sound financial management, follow through, staff development, that we're welcoming, we're facilitative, creative and innovative, that we are efficient and effective, and that we trust one another and build trust with one another. Moving on to what the town funds. First, public safety. We provide police services that include staff, vehicles, equipment, and building expenses. Next, infrastructure, public works, and utilities. That includes wastewater, staff, vehicles, equipment, testing, potential upgrades or repairs. The same thing for water. And under public works, staff, vehicles, beautification projects, and parks maintenance. Under Part 2, we also provide administration, which includes staffing, audit, budget preparation, legal services, day-to-day operations. Under government performance, information technology, software, staff development, and in terms of economic development and tourism, we have events such as our Harvest Festival, which is the largest event in the county annually, Music on the Green. We also provide Parks and Rec through our local park and some other events in town. Moving on to the budget process. Our operating budget process, the adopted budget serves as the town's operating capital budget for our next fiscal year. Our fiscal year as a locality in Virginia is from July 1st to June 30th. The budget must be balanced and needs to include contributions to capital reserves. We have two funds that are featured in our budget, our general fund and then our enterprise funds. General fund is tax revenue, and our enterprise funds include fees from services. And then council works through the budget, holding a public hearing, and is allowed to adopt the budget 14 days after a public hearing. Moving on to 2025 budget priorities. At the retreat, you all provided staff guidance and specific goal areas to work towards and prioritize. Number one, you all prioritize utilities, improving and maintaining the town's water and sewer system infrastructure, including water supply, treatment facilities, distribution, and collection systems. Also, excellent town staff, fostering a town workforce that is well-trained, appropriately compensated, has development opportunities, and demonstrates a dedication to public service. In terms of economic development, supporting business development and expansion that enhances the tax base and provides gainful employment. Smart growth, that we would support development that improves our community vitality. We also identified vibrant downtown to ensure that the town remains attractive, historic, and convenient center for culture and services within the county, and that we also serve as the county seat. In terms of government performance, that we would improve organizational efficiency and effectiveness in service delivery through the adoption of appropriate policies, procedures, and practices, and that we'd adopt and implement best practices. In terms of financial management, that we would provide fiscally responsible, sustainable, and resilient financial management that addresses both current and future needs. And then lastly, county relations, that we would communicate and collaborate with Caroline County for mutually beneficial results. Under our budget highlights for 2025, in the proposal today, this current budget proposal before you includes no new town real estate tax increases, no new town personal property tax increases, and no new town water and sewer rate increases. So fiscal year budget proposed is about $3 million, including all expenditures across all funds. Our budget at a glance: general fund, Fund 100, about 1.2 million. Our general fund, 500, about 551. Sewer fund, 520, about 740. Our capital projects fund, 300, about 421. Events and activities fund, about 32.5. Total expenditures and expenses, all funds, about $3 million. And then we have planned for transfers out of the general fund to the other funds at about $204,000. Moving on to ARPA. The American Rescue Plan Act was passed in 2021 and designated funding to state and local governments for infrastructure upgrades and to mitigate the impacts of COVID-19. The town of Bowling Green was allocated about $1.2 million as a NEU. Counties and cities were different in those allocations and through that federal government process. We as a NEU received two different tranches is what they were called, but basically different buckets of money. We received our first tranche in 2022 in June of 2021, June 30th, 2021, per our town bank statements that is verified in the amount about $609,000. And the same tranche was received later, July 22nd, actually, of 2022 per our town bank statements. And to date, we have expended of about $603,000 according to our town's Keystone Financial System as of March 27, 2024. ARPA funds have been previously designated by the Town Council for the following uses: water and sewer projects, Keystone Financial System, playground equipment, and we have submitted reports. The past staff have presented reports to Treasury for those items through those process and those reporting procedures last year. The important piece about ARPA is there is a timeline. Funds must be obligated by December 31st, 2024, and spent by December 31st, 2026. So currently, based on the information we have, we are proposing about 490 in expenditures this year. You see the items there under sewer system upgrades, about 105, well replacement, 175, water system upgrades, about 20, the playground equipment, about 150, and town hall rehab at about 40. And again, those funds must be obligated respectively. Budgeting for priorities and funding for core services. So prioritizing that grant funding that I just mentioned, ARPA is technically a grant funding opportunity, so we are prioritizing those, as also future grant opportunities for future projects. Prioritizing staff retention and staff development, building capital reserves through increased revenue collections and strategic investment in council goal areas that you all have identified. Also looking to pursue an economic development strategy to leverage tourism to support our local businesses and increase revenues, primarily in our meals and sales tax, and then work with department heads to evaluate their budgets and monitor spending. So in alignment with that strategic goal area of excellent staffing and government performance, I'm proposing some enhancements, two in particular. One as a part-time police officer, which would be a new addition. One full-time community development and partnerships position. There was a position in 2021 that was eliminated for community development, so looking to reinstate that. Reclassification of admin assistant from full-time to part-time based on current staffing levels. Reclassifying one full-time officer to part-time for this fiscal year, which would allow us to have two part-time officers for increased coverage for FY 2025. Market alignments, a 3% COLA, which is in alignment with what the county is proposing as well as the state. And our budget includes that we are compliant with mandated state minimum wages. Looking at a high level at the general fund budget impacts for FY 2025, on the revenue side, the intergovernmental service agreement with Fort Walker, we're projecting a $100,000 revenue. Our cigarette tax at $45,000, the bank stock tax at $275, and meals tax projected at $385 based on current trends. On the expenditure side, the Virginia retirement system, there's been an increase for those on the hybrid plan of about 14.48%. Our healthcare increase in alignment with the county is 2% increase. I mentioned the COLA in alignment with the county is about 3%. We also were able to reinstate town council salaries. Your salaries were waived in 2024. We brought those back. The audit services is an increase because we are looking to conduct 3 audits in one fiscal year. The verbal quote that I've received from the audit firm was for $30,000, so we've budgeted for that. The attorney fees have increased about $21,000, so that's included there as well. Our information technology for services also for about $22,000, some of which is one-time in nature. Under administration, that brings the total to about $336,000. Again, that mentions and that includes town council reinstated salaries, staff salaries budget for 25, establishes information technology and security for our operations, and increases contingency for emergencies in that line item just a bit. Finance, about $395. Again, most of the increase there is for the 3 audits instead of 1 in the fiscal year, which would be typical. Increase in pre-audit services to complete those past 2 audits. Increase in printing and supplies. One specific item for our auditors is about 571 pages. So you're looking at a lot of reams of paper that we're looking to print in the next year. And then budgeting for actuals and computer licenses and support. Moving on to public safety, about 187, an additional part-time officer, as I mentioned, increasing the time for the part-time admin assistant, and then doing a study for retirement supplement for our full-time position in the police department. Under Public Works, Utilities and Development, about $350. Again, the one full-time position reinstatement, added a grants matching line item of $25,000 so that we can have matching funds for grants when those arise, and then increases in vehicle maintenance that has tripled since last budget. General fund totals are right there before you, with the total general fund expenditures plus transfers out from the general fund to other funds of about $1.4 million. This highlights those transfers out of about 2.4 to your capital projects fund in the amount of 70,000, events and activities 14.5, and the sewer fund 120. Moving on to enterprise funds. Some of the increases that we see in terms of revenues, rates were adjusted last year based on direction from USDA. So we do see some slight increases in revenues there. And then the expenditures, repairs and maintenance have gone up. Our sludge removal costs have increased, and our chemicals costs have increased drastically. Looking at the water fund. The proposed budget is about $551,000. Increases in repairs and maintenance. You know, we've had 20 main breaks in one fiscal year, and this establishes a contingency fund for emergencies there. Sewer fund, about $740. Again, increases in repairs and maintenance, and establishes contingency fund for emergencies there. Under Events and Activities Fund, 32.5, again, the highlights there for Harvest Festival, Town Hall activities, and miscellaneous events. Under the Capital Improvement Fund, In terms of the capital budgeting process, again, the capital budget process serves as an outline for large-scale capital expenditures. It serves as a plan. No expenditures will occur if we are not able to pay for them within the budget. The highlights there are prioritizing ARPA funds for our water system replacement and upgrades, the park playground upgrade, town hall rehab, and then starting to build a capital reserve. This is a snapshot there of the CIP. For those items I just mentioned, we also have a grant that we're looking to anticipate receiving for upgrades in our police vehicles for a cage, some safety equipment, as well as firearms. And then in future years, a truck in our water fund, and then the other projects, as I mentioned before, line replacement, and then in future years, plant upgrades that were identified through the Dewberry PER. So in closing, the FY25 budget summary snapshot there across all funds. And then budget timeline, budget estimates were provided to Town Council on April 1st. We've had some meetings in between then and now. So we are today with the budget proposal to set the tax rate for advertisement for April 4th. Today, and then to set the public hearing, budget public hearing for May 2nd, and then budget adoption on June 4th. Next steps for staff recommends the Town Council move to set a public hearing for May 2nd and advertise for unchanged tax and fee rates. That would then proceed with a public notice being published. Our attorney mentioned some of those specifics, so I'll work closely with him to ensure that we are meeting all of our appropriate public notices to be sent out, and then for budget adoption, approval and appropriations on June 4th. And that concludes my presentation. I'll entertain any questions that you all have.
Just back a couple slides, we were talking about grants. Have we checked into grants for playground equipment? Because I know they're out there. Have we checked in on any of those, or?
That is certainly on our list to investigate. There are plenty of grant opportunities for outdoor recreation, especially since COVID. So we're definitely looking into that. But again, with the timelines, with the congressional funding requests, we're working on those bigger ticket items right now. Yes,
That's
sir.
good. Okay, that's fine. All right, as long as you're looking at them, that's great. Thank you. Anybody else have any major concerns or questions?
Well, just one thought that I had. And Andy and I had talked about that today in our going over the budget. You know, one thing that I feel like we ought to be providing the town is, you know, our streets need to be clean. I mean, I feel like we ought to have some street sweeping, you know, on a regular basis. I know that other localities do that. But I also feel like we ought to have some sort of beautification at our entry points, you know, flowers or something like that. I mean, I think when you come into town, I mean, I think it ought to look nice. And, you know, one of the ways that I feel like we ought to potentially, you know, pay for that is our salaries. I mean, I still don't know why we get, you know, I proposed last year that we get rid of our salaries and we give that to the town. None of us are here for a paycheck. And, you know, I mean, I just feel like those funds would be great revenue sources to beautify the town, and I just want everybody to think about that. I would really, you know, just recommend that we forego that again, but that's just my thought.
I agree with you. You know, you go to a lot of planned communities. You go to Ladysmith Village, and I know it's an HOA probably, right? There's the entryway, there's fresh flowers, there's, you know, annuals planted all the different seasons. And I agree. I mean, you travel around the country and there's villages and towns that when you enter, it's very attractive. And I think we need to do that. And I'm in 100% agreement. I don't know what the budget impact is on our salaries, but when I guess you made the motion to do away with them, I don't know what the total amount is, but I don't do this for the money, and I'm almost ashamed to take any money, because here's the deal. No amount of money is worth what we all do, right? We all, whether the public ever knows it or not, we put in a lot of time. And so it's almost insulting to receive anything, because it never fully compensates you for what you actually do. And in a time like this, until we can get our 21, 22, 23 audits done, I'm with Dan. I don't, you can take whatever, I don't even know what my salary is, but you can take it out of the budget and put it towards some flowers at the entrance, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, you know, David, back 3 or 4 years ago, I helped do it. We planted iris in every welcome, the 4, and Melissa had the guys go put rock and covered them right up. So, I mean, we had it. But it was taken away.
I think we all want some kind of flowery type thing. Lions Club used to do it right at the entrance of town. That is a VDOT section. The things that are up there now are just residue from what was left. All we need to do is have VDOT say to us, we can plant. Frankly, I have tons of perennials that I transplant. I have no problem providing for right in front here or in other locations. My challenge has always been the flowers that have been put up on Main Street. We've paid $1,200 for flowers that are not sustainable. I think if we're going to get flowers, get something that is environmentally sustainable. They don't need a ton of water. Fescues and things of that nature instead of begonias that will die in 2 days, and we've just thrown away $1,200 for nothing. So I just think if we do that, just be very cautious on what flowers we select. And frankly, in reference to the salary, I don't do this for the money either, but my time is valuable, and I'm just going to say that. My time is valuable. I put in a lot of time. Maybe it doesn't cover the cost of whatever, but I feel I have no problem accepting money to work here on council. Again, it doesn't matter to me, but my time is valuable just like everybody else's.
So to answer, I think one of the questions, council members' salary is about $1,800. The mayor receives $2,700. So for those of you who would like to forego your checks, we could possibly create and add a budget line item just so that we don't have to change any of the numbers when we go out to advertise. That'll be about $3,500 if 2 of you want to do that. And then I can look to see if there's any other items, particularly in the contingency line item. I asked Mr. Fortune in our Public Works Department to get some updates on a street sweeper because we have had that in the past. So once I get those quotes, I can get a better understanding and provide you all with the frequency of the street sweeper, but definitely before, you know, major events, Memorial Day weekend, 4th of July, Harvest Festival, we would want to prioritize at least, I think, those 3.
And one thing I'll say on the street sweeper, and we bought one, we bought 2, so we'd have parts. And it just, I think we'd be much better money spent if we just contracted out 4 times a year, because it didn't pan out, right? So, yeah.
No.
Yeah, we did that, but one of the things you need to do when you contract it out, I know we had a hard time before, was having them come in here at nighttime because they're busy elsewhere trying to, you know, do a lot of the bigger projects at nighttime, because then you don't have these cars on the streets so you can get it clean good. So, you know, we need to try to do something bring them in at night, real early in the morning, or, you know, something so they can sweep it. You know, other than that, you see this going down through there, you know, and then we're paying money for not an excellent job.
Yes, you're absolutely right. We would have to obviously communicate that with our residents and ensure proper signage so that vehicles are out of the right of way when that work occurs. And I think that's something we can work on.
I mean, is that something that you've addressed in the budget? Or would that, you need to modify?
I think if you all are willing to forego, and after I have a better understanding and get an actual quote, if there's an amendment that needs to be made or something that needs to be modified, we can do that. But today, that's not included in there, no.
You can throw my 1,800 towards it.
You can do mine as well.
Okay.
Today in our meeting with India, I think what we have for the Parks and Rec, 140,000 and 50,000 for town hall. I just made a suggestion. We've got a historic building here. And I know the park and recs, we need some new playground equipment and all that stuff, but we need to do the whole amount over there? Or could we shift some of that to better serve this building here? Make sure all the leaks are taken care of finally, the leak at the door, the remediation of the mold, the ceiling tile. I think it would be money well spent on this building because it is a historic building in the town of Bowling Green. I think we can buy some good playground equipment. I don't know what it costs, but I think $140,000 is a little bit high on all that.
Well, so I agree, but Indy, when we met our 2-on-2 thing too, you said that 150 figure for the playground equipment was something that was pre-you, right?
Correct. It was something that was identified and included in the report to the Treasury. So I do think, though, that you all can de-obligate that and modify that if you would like.
So but is your understanding that 150,000 for the playground equipment was to totally replace what's out there or add to it?
It was gonna be pickleball courts and everything else that was gonna be put out there.
Oh,
But I can tell you 150,000 won't even touch the playground equipment. It won't touch it. Playground equipment is quite expensive. It was just, I think Valerie and Deborah or whoever was in on it to try to beef it up. And council, I think, decided at the time to allocate 150,000 to the playground because it just needs it. But that's just a drop in the bucket because the new matting surface, for the playground is very expensive. And then the equipment itself, so 150 won't even touch it. That's why I was hoping for grants, for us to try to help out, which there'll probably be some type of match type grants. I doubt there'll be 100%.
yeah. Well, I was on council when we put that thing in, and I don't remember how much it cost us. Obviously, it's still very usable. I mean, my grandchildren play over there all the time. I mean, there's nothing that's not usable. To Randy's point, this is a revenue stream, this building. I mean, if it's in tip-top shape, if it's, the ceiling tiles replaced and aesthetically it's a little better and it's sounder, if that's a word, like the ventilation we had to report on, that's money well invested if we're having more weddings and parties here. I mean, that's a nice revenue stream when you think about it.
Well, I'm sorry, go ahead, Valerie. Well, the playground needs a big upgrade. First of all, your playground equipment is up out the ground too far because everything is settled down. It's not quite ADA appliance compliant. The swings are in the front, they should be in the back, so it's not legally set up correct as far as functionality and safety wise. The swing should always be in the back. So there's issues with it that needs to be addressed to bring it up, whether it gets replaced or not. But we do need to work on getting it so that people can use it, and they do use it. We got to look out for the kids and the young folks. And I agree with getting this building fixed up. It's just, how do we do it?
So when we started this in 2022, Dan created a blueprint or
Yeah.
of a park
Yes.
to upgrade and to do all of those things. And we also thought, instead of running and doing that right away, we spoke about making a community park instead of just the playground. So the entire area can be utilized by not just kids, but, elderly people, maybe just want to sit there and enjoy the trees and read a book. So just kind of encompassing everything, maybe like a community park campus. But it is really, real expensive, as Mr. Mayor said. Some of it's not ADA compliant, but in reference to the National Historic Register, and I mentioned that to India, to put the building on the National Historic Register, that alone gives us a 20% almost tax credit and additional funding that we might be able to utilize for the building. So I think if we start doing that, or Mr. La Rivera, if he's doing the legwork on that, to see what kind of funding, extra matches we can get for that.
to go off what you were saying, Valerie, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but, you know, when we were talking about the juxtaposition, the both of this building and over there, you know, if you remember that word campus got thrown around a few times back then. When we're talking about, you know, setting aside appropriating monies for this, rather than say, you know, one pot of money for the playground and one pot of money for this building, can we call the whole thing a project and just give the total sum, and then however it ends up, or is there a way to like couple those together rather than have them separate?
I think we could amend it to put it together. I will say, if we do that, there may be some challenges if we're submitting the CIP to go after grant funding, if it is not explicitly called out what the use is for. But we could look into that and get back to you all, or we could just keep it separate if you all wanted to pull back some of the money for the playground. I will say, just went through a parks master planning process in another community. And for equipment like that, you could be looking at anywhere between $50,000 to $100,000, depending on how much you put in. So that's something just to consider. There will be some mulch upgrades that we just need to do based on the changes of seasons anyway. So we will do that this year. But anything beyond that, that's something council could consider reprioritizing for more for the building rehab. If you wanted to drop it to 50, we could do that. That's completely up to you all.
Hey, just don't get me wrong. I mean, my kids use that park. My grandkids still use the park. I just was trying to put more emphasis on a little bit more on this building than the park. I mean, there's some things we can do at the park, yeah. I mean, we talked about putting a sidewalk out to the pavilion, so it was easier access for 88 people in a wheelchair to get to the pavilion to be able to use it. I'm in agreement with all that, and some mulch. I think the mulch around the sleds and that stuff would raise that level up, which is sunk down a little bit, which would help that as well. But I mean, when we got $150,000 for the parks and we only got $40,000 for trying to fix this building, I think it's a little lopsided. Maybe we can pull money from some other place to help with this thing, because this is going to be very expensive as well.
I agree with all of that. I do have a question, and I think we spoke about that in regards to a community park. I really think the community should be involved because they're the people that are going to be using it. We had prepared a survey. It never went anyplace. But I just think something like this, where we're going to be spending those funds, the people who are going to use it, and not just adults. Children, it's just a question to ask a child, what do you want to use? What innovation, what imagination do you get from playing on a colored piece of dirt? Just things of that nature, just to get them involved so that we can create something that the community does want, and not just us to say, we're gonna buy a new swing set. Well, that's great, but maybe they don't want a swing set. Maybe they want something else to provide them imagination, innovation for children and not just adults. Although I like swing sets.
Yeah. I think you're right about that. We just went through a parks master planning process, and one of the things that ultimately most of these grant processes want to see is the community involvement and input. So there are a couple ways we can go about that, but surveying is definitely an approach. There are also people who do park design for a living and that kind of community engagement process. So it really just depends on your council's priority and how much or how little of that you want to do before that process. But it's definitely, community visioning on a park is definitely critical.
So where did that, before I got back on council, where did that 150 figure come from? Was that a priced out?
Kind of all, as a council at that time, kind of come up with that figure.
Yeah.
We were given that one handout. It wasn't
Yeah.
an RFP, but it was some research from one particular provider where they came up with that number. That was from
And
our
it was for
prior,
like new replacing equipment or adding equipment?
a little bit of both. They were going to resurface the stuff in there too, but that was our prior public works director, and a couple others got together to submit.
Yeah, I mean, there was a committee. I mean, I feel I was on the committee, I wasn't on council, and Tammy was on it, and, and so we, sketched up a few items and came to council, but my recollection is it kind of, other things got heated, things got heated and it kind of fizzled out. It's kind of what happened, but I think that figure is right. I mean, I do remember talking to some
Jeff,
people that are providing.
we got it up if you want to see it, the plan.
Oh, okay, and I provided India the plan. She requested it, just so.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind seeing it, because if it's, when was that?
2 years ago, I think.
22?
Yeah, 2 years
like
ago.
that.
Yeah, Tammy was still on then, so yeah, it was 2 years ago. Yeah, yeah. But I mean, this is, this is something we can, we can adopt the budget, and as we get more information and this, we can amend it as we go along after the budget has been done, reallocate funding elsewhere. Because, Congress,
I mean, it may be.
Council
that we
has
need
that
to-
right.
It may be we need to leave the $150,000 in the playground, but we need to come up with some more money for this building, I think.
Yeah.
And it is a good revenue stream for us, and we need to make it to where people, that's a beautiful place. Let's have our wedding reception there.
Mhm.
So Dan, do you remember, so are those pickleball courts back there?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so this was not my,
Okay.
my idea. I was really just taking what we talked about in committee and memorializing that on a plan so that
Gotcha.
everybody could see it and then for discussion. But
Gotcha.
yes, those were pickleball courts, and that was one thing that was discussed.
And we could get that for 150?
No, I don't think so.
No, the whole plan, I found the quote,
Let's get them.
the whole plan, Mayor,
Ma'am.
the whole plan quote on October 24th of 2023 for everything was $460,000. So the actual equipment included in this says 82,000, and that was again in 23. And then the poured in place materials was about 141. So
What was that a quote for? Was that just playground?
this appears to be a full comprehensive quote for everything that I think was included in that design.
Including pickleball courts?
I'm just perusing. This is the first time I've seen it. It does not appear to be pickleball courts in here.
I'll tell you what, if you don't, that is a big draw. I mean, people playing that everywhere. County is now getting in on it, and they've got 2 or 3 places there that they're just opening up. It's really big for the elderly, and
Well, so the surface of the delineated area of the playground equipment is mulch
for right now, yes.
for right now. And it needs to be yearly fluffed up and added to, right? Because mulch beds decay, So I can see doing that, but I don't know what I don't know what $150,000 would do right now.
Yeah, well, the mulch also is not ADA compliant.
Well, do we know that?
That's what I've checked into.
Because we
It's
put this
not
in
ADA compliant.
2015, and I don't know that ADA has changed that much. Is mulch no longer ADA compliant?
So I am not a park specialist, and there are people who are actually certified in looking at your parks and determining what is compliance, but I worked with one a year ago, and based on my recollection, there are some specifics as to surface getting to the park, and then the ability, whether it's mats or something adjacent to certain parts, to really determine that. I will say, in terms of safety, there are specific inches that the mulch, if you're using mulch, should be.
Yep.
And I believe it was 5 to 6 inches, don't quote me. That's kind of the industry standard. So that's just for your consideration.
I mean, if we don't have a plan how the 150 is going to be spent, and it doesn't get us, so we don't know what we're getting for 150, I'm almost for flopping that 40 here, put the 150 here and put 40 out there and resurface that mulch area. Because, I mean, what are we going to spend 150 on?
Well, see, there was also some talk about when we were doing that, as far as,
I'm here to tell you, every piece of equipment out there works.
Yes.
Because I've pushed my children on them, watched them slide down it, and watched them, and I got in those things that spin around and make you sick.
Yeah.
So they work.
But I think, I thought there was some climbing equipment or the handles that were missing, but they could have been replaced. You know, my recollection too is that we were trying to make it ADA accessible to get to with the sidewalk, you know, trying to make the pavilion ADA accessible to get into that, you know, and so those were two
Well,
considerations.
we put a ramp in on that,
On the plan.
on that pavilion. We did do that. And we had them come and cut down on the railroad ties for wheelchairs to get in and or people who can't step up. But you get a wheelchair in the mulch, it's hard to get around by themselves. It had to be put. But one of the big thing is that mulch needs to be bought up because you have too much of the lower part of the swings and.
Well, some of it's just dirt.
That are down, or that are up too high because it's sunk. Yeah, and so it needs to be, it all needs to be brought up. The other thing is, I'd like to have each one of you, when you get a chance, go out to that pavilion and look up at the top where all the uprights are and see how they're starting to twist apart. The hurricanes are twisting off, some of them ain't even hardly on. You know, I had it looked at a couple of years ago, and it's something that needs to be addressed on that. As far as safety is wind pulling it off, it's really twisting bad. Oh yeah, you go and look at it, yes.
Now, were we, you know, when MetroCast was here, they were talking about they didn't necessarily need the headworks, or did they say they do need the headworks?
I think they do need the headworks.
They do need, so there's no opportunity to gain additional ground there for the park? I guess my question, I see these other buildings back here, are they being utilized, rented?
Those are homes.
No, that,
The one behind the one on the top right-hand corner? Isn't that haircuttery place? Oh, okay, all right.
But, well, I know we did find out that Breeze is paying for the building. So,
Yes. And the other part of that is connected to our water system. It's one, there's some part of our water system housed in the one on the right.
What is that up there in that top right-hand corner? Right there. You just had it right there.
I thought that was part of the water system.
I think,
All right.
yeah.
And what's the other building? To the left. Oh, okay, that's where they're headed, okay.
I can check back with Tammy on future plans and if that's needed, because I do kind of remember them not being so clear on what they actually need, because so many things are wireless in other places. So we can definitely double check on that.
One other thing that we were talking about on that was coming off the back of the police department building, because we needed restrooms. We needed a public restroom in a public park. And that was talked about, and I don't know how far we went with that, but I don't think that's part of the 150,000 either. We upgrade the park and we get more people out there, we have no place for them to use the restroom at, which is not good. But
I believe it's one.
just one, yeah.
It's just it's a nice piece of land and to be utilized by everyone. You know, just children, you know, parents, you know, again, elderly people who just want to sit under a tree, maybe read a book. You know, just to enjoy the whole area of the community.
So then if we leave it at 150,000 in the budget and we pass the budget, will there then be a committee created in 24, 25 to spend that 150 on something?
We could definitely do that if that's council's desire. Also, if you wanted to reprioritize the other way, like you mentioned, we could do that as well. I think what we will be doing based on some of the other priorities anyway is focusing some on our more critical needs on the water and sewer side of things,
Yeah.
and then pursuing a grant opportunities for the parks, as we mentioned. So we can go either direction based on.
I think criticality wise, this building is number one. And the playground where we need to get out there and rake up the mulch, add mulch, I think that thing is okay for a few years, but you know, it's like we need to fix the house before we add on.
yeah, I'm in agreement with that.
So in terms of changes, I have amending and moving and creating a beautification line item in Public Works in the amount of $3,600 based on the 2 council salaries, and amending the ARPA CIP to include 44 parks and 150 for town hall rehab.
That would be my recollection, my recommendation.
Well, I
but,
mean, you know,
let's-
with what you said, I mean, do we need the 40 for the playground? I mean, would we spend that much?
Sustainable, make it sustainable for now. But
We could look into getting the mulch up to code, making sure we have the right depth of mulch and repairing any safety issues that may be present upon assessing the site. That 40 grand would be sufficient to do those things most likely, as well as perhaps give us some money to dedicate to doing more extensive community outreach and further efforts in that regard.
Yeah, and I think in the immediate, there are firms that have ADA specialists through park programs that I would say it'd be money well spent if we actually had someone who's an expert and can provide us with a report on things that actually need to be fixed per ADA. And then we can have a good ballpark of what we need to prioritize after that.
But I don't want you all expending 1 second of your time on this playground when we're in this situation on these audits. I mean, literally, I'm for flip-flopping that dollar amount because I think we've got to do some stuff in this building, but I don't want you all, if you want me to tell you what I want you doing, it's not looking for playground grants right now. We got time for that after we get this house in order.
can we also pursue putting it on the National Historic Register? Because this building ought to be noticed, I just want to get back out there.
Well, let me ask you about that because,
Exposure.
yeah, so I know it is a contributing member to the historic district. So if you go right there in front of the Bowling Green Suites, there is a walkabout sign and then a bronze state. So we are a historic district, and there's certain buildings and houses in this town that contribute to it. I don't know, and Jeff, you might be able to help us on this. I don't know as a governmental body. I mean, like if I put my house and land personally on a register, there's some tax credits available, but I don't think that applies to towns, does it?
No, you're not a taxable entity.
Right.
You know, there might be other benefits to having that designation.
Yeah.
Tax.
From a prestige standpoint, I get you, but I have learned recently how historic easement can hamstring you because it's in perpetuity. It's forever. And then you have certain restrictions you have to live up to. And I know people now that regret selling tax credit, you know, getting historic easements and getting tax credits because perpetuity is a long time.
Yeah,
And then the restrictions that come with, the restrictions, I don't know that we can afford it, you know?
yeah, and,
Just don't
Yeah.
look into it.
and, and the thing about that, like you're saying is, when you want to do something, now you have to go by the interior decorator and decorate. He tells you what you can or can't do, the colors you got to do and all this. So there's good things and then there's a lot of limitations, to it. So, it's something we can look into and find out how it functions maybe, but anybody else?
Yeah, I have some, but are we done with that? Can I get my colleague sitting next to me again?
No, I don't know. I don't know.
Anybody else could have spoke during that. All right, I have two aspects of this to talk about. One real quick, and I don't think I'm alone. I've gotten phone calls about different financial things in town and people's concerns over things. So I'd feel very remiss if I didn't at least bring them up. The first one, I understand why it isn't really reflected on here, but it is the trash. We hear about that pretty constantly. I personally didn't think there's really a whole lot that we could do about the trash right now. We still have another year left on the contract. I would like to think, from my point of view, it seems like administrative staff here has done a lot of work towards the issues that we were having. There's still some more to go, and every time you fix something, something else somewhere maybe goes wrong, and so a new person's affected. But I think there was, although we had a person that was frustrated today, they did the right thing. They came and they notified us what the situation was, and that's what has to continue to happen, because the only thing that we can do with our service provider is continue to say what our issues are and hold them accountable to that. I wanted to, entertain the aspects of, what could we do if it was going to get worse, get out of contract or, look for another provider, things like that. But the fact remains we do have, whatever amount of time left on it. So that not being a heavy discussion topic, I understand. But I felt it at least needed to be brought up at right now. The other one that I had, I've gotten more phone calls about, is the water rates and sewer rates and everything. We have mentioned more in passing, not in a policy way, but the idea of looking into the rates and the rate structure. Minimum usage thresholds, the tier system that we have, everything from that to the difference that you pay out of town versus in town and everything like that. There's been a lot of folks that have contacted me and I assume others about, hey, what can you do about these different things? I had wanted to pursue a method of more like shifting those lines a little bit, lowering the minimum usage threshold. Right now it's at 5,000 gallons, somewhere between 3 and 4 or whatever. But with doing that, you also would then have to lower that minimum rate. Otherwise, you'd be charging people more. And then you'd have to do the math to compensate that on the upper end. Because you don't want to go negative revenue. You want to get more on the high side. That potentially, could also have an effect of curtailing some excessive usage on that top end if those rates were increased. But that would be a decrease for some and increase for others, and so you have to be very careful how you pursue that. But that was a rather important thing that I had wanted to take a look at. Well, I mean, not personally, but that was, those two things were my big items. I'll leave it at that, but I think we'll hear more from other people when this gets to a public hearing later on.
Anybody else? Because we need to, I guess, authorize this to go to public hearing.
Only thing, I'm ready to go to make a motion, but I just want to say, we've had 3 full months, January, February, March, and we're 4 days, what are we, 4 days in April?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm telling you, I'm so impressed with the presentation we've had. Does anybody remember last year this time, we were all taking a whack at it up on the wall.
It was a terrible thing.
With all that we got going on forensically, I want to thank staff for figuring this thing out and presented it in, of course, in a balanced way, but with no increases. Awesome job. Thank you.
So go ahead, India.
Thank you, Councilmember Stork. And I also like to thank, we've been having some assistance with the Berkeley group just because we have been so short-staffed. And so Dr. Bailey, who is here today, has helped alongside me on some deep dives into this based on our system and our financial situation. So I have to thank her as well.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
And
So, yes.
you are Dr.
Yes, sir. I'm Dr. Cheryl Bailey.
Yes, ma'am. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Thank you for helping out. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor and members of council. Thank you very much.
I think we've got a good staff, a new staff here that's really turned the light on in the tunnel for us. and with you helping him, just brightened it up. I appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been an honor working with staff. They are really crackerjack. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And your attorney and I go way back.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, good deal. Old friends.
Yeah.
Maybe afterwards we can have some champagne. All right, well, I got Mr. Stork over here said that he would like to make a motion that we go to, allow India to go to public hearing, or do you have something you need to add real quick, India, or what?
Yeah, specifically for public hearing on May 2nd and advertise for unchanged tax and fee rates.
So moved.
All right, I got a motion by Mr. Stork. I got a second by Valerie. Any discussion? We will make a roll call on this one, just, Gene,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
it's Mr. Chenault, right?
Yes, 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 and yes.
Valerie,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Randy.
Yes.
Motion carries 100%. We will advertise, we will have a public hearing at our next meeting, which is what, May
2nd.
2nd.
Thank you.
All right, next is item number 11. If I can back up for 1 second. No, sorry, we'll do this first, and then before we go to closed session, I'll bring something up. Utility billing process and improvements, phase 1, India.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. This is a process improvement being proposed by staff that will have multiple benefits for the municipal government. First, to emphasize, well, just to give you some general background, the town currently allows for billing directly to renters for utility billing. And what this means is every time there's a new renter in town, a new account has to be set up. They have to come in the office. And then on the other side, when the renter leaves, the account has to be closed or become inactive. And oftentimes, when the renters do leave town, there are outstanding fees, and the town is in a not advantageous position to recover those fees. So really, there's a lot of unnecessary work going on the staff side, the setting up and closing of accounts. And it creates inconsistencies in our water billing. We don't have a standard number of accounts each year, so that makes budgeting more unpredictable in terms of producing revenue projections. So there's a pretty easy fix here to directly bill the property owners. And why that would be advantageous to the town is we wouldn't lose what I think it was $50,000 this year in outstanding fees from these renter accounts through mechanisms such as a security deposit that landlords could easily use that mechanism to retain those funds and turn those over to the town. But really, so there's a revenue angle to it, but again, just the removal of all those processes that has to happen administratively for these accounts and the budgetary issues that are caused. There are operational improvements, revenue improvements, and again, as the property owners are well positioned to obtain these funds, there's not too much downside for anybody. But that's just general background. I'll pass it over to the town manager. Thank you.
He just about covered that. I will say further investigation into Keystone has brought up some of these challenges, and as he mentioned, some of the numbers of inactive accounts, and just looking at those amounts that are in arrears from dating back to kind of last year. And quite frankly, particularly those renters who may have moved out of town or out of state will be virtually impossible to collect. And I'll let the attorney chime in on ways that we could go after collection if needed. In the Commonwealth, we currently contract with tax that handles our delinquent tax on the real estate side and personal property tax side, but that we could also use tax for utility billing delinquent bills as well, if that's a decision that council would like to make. But for right now, in terms of phase 1 and an immediate fix, we're looking to make this change with your direction and approval so that we can begin to clean up the process and ensure that we have accuracy in accounts moving forward.
Go ahead.
Well, one question that I have, I mean, water and sewer obviously are one utility, but, any commercial or residential typically have some sort of electric, utility that's provided. Do they typically contract with the property owner or the user?
Those are, as far as I know, the user, and they do an automatic flip. Like when they check out, it's supposed to automatically flip back over to the owner.
And I guess
and
why
then
would
vice
it,
versa, and 'cause mine does.
why, and I'm just asking because I'm just trying to think this through, but I mean, just so you know, you have, cable, phone, electric, they don't do it that way. Why would we want to do something different? I mean, we're just a utility and obviously it works that way with everyone else. Why are we the exception?
I think because we run a public utility and we rely on public dollars to fund our public utility. And based on the current process that we have in town has pretty much led to where we are today. And I think you all have asked me about ways to improve our financial position. This is a relatively easy process. There are other localities who do have the property owner as the account holder. It can be reassigned in care of the tenant, but ultimately would be the onus of the property owner to ensure that their tenant pays, and if their tenant pays skips town, then throughout some process, we would be able to accurately get those revenues back that are due to the town. So really for us, we're a bit different than a private company that can go after collection methods in a number of ways.
Well, all right, thank you. So just to be transparent, I am a landlord, so I don't know if I can question or whatever, but I just want that to be transparent. So one of the biggest challenges I see is, unfortunately, at the town's end, when you only charge a $100 deposit, I'm surprised, I was amazed that the deposits aren't at least $250, considering the housing and square footage. That's how you would have come to that determination. I guess you've been charging a $100 deposit for the last 40 years, but I think that needs to increase, because when a person does leave and they're in arrears or come and they pay their late bill, $100 isn't even going to cover their bill. $250 may do that. In relation to the deposits that I charge my tenants, my deposit is not a last month rent thing, it is a deposit. And that deposit goes to damages or whatever else. So I would work that out to utilize it for utility, for water, because all other utilities are from the service end. They take care of all those on their own. But I do know in code, there is a form, authorization form, that the landlord can give to the town to allow the tenant to receive that bill. So is that something you're just thinking of implementing, or because Virginia code allows that? Virginia tenant landlord code allows that. So is that something you're thinking of implementing as well, or going straight to landlord pays water and there is no other alternative?
No, I think the in care of portion, if that's the form,
Gotcha.
I haven't seen the form that you're referencing, ma'am, but definitely that could be something we include in the process as part of that process improvement moving forward. And we can kind of figure those nuances out. But I think what we're looking for is just direction, as JC mentioned, to be able to establish a standard, and when we need to clean up that process, reach out to those people who would be affected so that we can get a consistent list. And I wish Ms. Chenault was here to be able to talk a little bit more of that process, but she's not here today. So I can't answer the specifics of how we got that, but I will say there are some accounts in our system that are already assigned in care of. So I believe some people were utilizing that, but it's not consistent. And the inconsistency is creating these inactive accounts and perhaps accounts that shouldn't have been added in the first place.
Gotcha. And will you send a notice to landlords so but you don't even know who a landlord would be on a rental, or they tell you it's a rental? I don't know.
That's something that we can definitely look into. We would appropriately notify the property owner of the change and then go through that process.
So I think it's important, and that's what we want you to do. Look at, things that's $50,000. That's a big deal for us. So I think we do want you to look at all that stuff.
But we also do need to think about how much of this is our past staff's fault, right? So, or procedures or, deposits. $100 deposit is ridiculous. It should be at least the what is it, 2 months, 3 months? The building is 2 months. It ought to be at least 2 months deposit, I would say. But that goes back to us doing what we should be doing. If they're in arrears and they're still there, we need to hang a thing on the doorknob, and then we need to turn them off. We've let this money leak out the cracks. We have, and so I think we need to look. And I want you to keep looking, and then we'll make a decision on whether we think what you proposed is fair. Because $50,000 is a lot of money, and it would be an easy fix to hit the landlords with that. But I'm just wondering if it'd be. Is it $100 deposit? Is that all? Yeah.
Is that the same for out of town?
That's no incentive to pay bill at all.
so, yeah. I think it is. But-
It doesn't even cover,
And see,
yeah.
Because if we're on our game, if we're doing our job and we notice they missed their bill, we shut them off, we got that bill, right? Their deposit's gone.
yeah,
But that's record keeping, that's labor, and that's, intensity.
and the thing about turnoffs, okay? Do I have the right to turn my tenant off on public utilities because he doesn't pay me for the water bill? Where you have the right to turn them off to collect the water bill.
Public utility the town it has to be 60 days in arrears, I think. Yeah, but there's all in statute
Yeah,
as
but-
far
but-
as
but that's what I'm saying.
enforcement.
I can't go to my tenant and say, hey, look, I need my water bill, and he don't pay it, and you don't pay it the next time, I'm gonna turn you off. No, I can't do that because.
Probably
it's a public
violates
utility.
landlord-tenant law.
Yeah.
So y'all are the only ones that can do it to assure that you're getting your money. So, you're putting us on the line to be the bad guy, and we can't get our money where you can. So if we do some type of situation to where, okay, when they check out, anything in the rears, after they leave, we need to bill the landlord for it, But at the same time, now you got late fees, so you want to hit the landlord with a late fee because they were late paying it. Now you got $100 late fee on there, so now you get the landlord for it.
Are there
So
other localities that do bill the landlord,
There are other localities that ultimately the property owner
property owner?
is ultimately responsible if the bill is not paid.
Yeah.
In most cases, it is assigned in care of the renter, and it's the renter's responsibility. But ultimately, if the renter does not
There's no recourse.
pay,
You can't get them.
then we can't get them, and then no one is on the hook. And so
No.
essentially, it becomes other people in town are on the hook for subsidizing people who haven't paid their bill. And I believe, and maybe the attorney can chime in, is that I think in other localities, there's a possibility to maybe put a lien on the property for delinquents at a certain level, which is again a reason why it needs to tie back to the property owner. The renter basically has no skin in the game, for lack of a better term, after they're gone.
So is it, in the normal course of business, we can't find out what people's utility bills are. However, if my tenant, for some reason I suspect, is not paying their water bill, as the landlord, because it is my property, can I come to you and say, let me see their bill? Will I be able to do that? And normally you wouldn't, but since this now changes the parameter, can I request to see that so I can make sure my tenant?
These are all good questions that I've not researched, so I don't know. That's landlord-tenant law. That's not local government law.
But also, when I look at it.
So we can look into this and move on.
Being a renter, and I'm not saying my landlord would do this, but if we go back and let them say what the price is, who's to say, okay, I just paid my water, sewer, garbage bill 2 months, $283. So he rounds it up to $300. So now I'm paying more than I need to pay. And I could see landlords abusing that. But I think the best way to make them do it is the landlords are already giving you, you guys are getting security deposits. Maybe the landlord needs to upgrade their security deposit by a little bit more too, if they're gonna be held on the hook for a water bill.
Well,
Other than damages.
and like you were saying, who's to say the landlord doesn't pay the water bill and the tenant gets cut off?
That's true too.
Yeah, I mean,
We
you
will,
got-
we will investigate with the town attorney and bring it back to you, with a couple
out
options.
here Who owns how much, and we've been after them money for how long now? They don't pay, we're gonna cut them off. It ain't their fault. The landlord didn't pay.
India and JC, please
So
don't
it's
take this discussion as stop looking for ideas of saving us money.
Right.
Please don't. Keep bringing this to us. I think we need to research it, look at bringing our deposit up. Yeah.
Yeah, and my question wasn't, I'm not opposed, I'm just trying to think things through, and I know you mentioned it today when we met, and what other localities do that? Do you know of one?
We can bring you a couple of lists. I know at least, the town of Colonial Beach does it that way. I think I'm not sure if Warsaw does it that way, but I can pull a list together of comparable towns and show you that that is an option that is available, and I believe would increase our collection rates. I once worked for a locality that was in a tough financial position, just like we are, and the wise city manager said, "We don't have a budget problem, we have a collections problem, and we can't fix our collections problem until we fix these processes. So the longer we delay fixing processes, the collections problems will continue." And I think as a town manager, it's definitely my duty to bring that to you all for consideration. So.
All right. That's item 12 is out of the way. Next is closed session. But before we do that, last meeting, Mr. Shebel stood up here and told us about a filtration system problem, and that we needed to have money to have engineers draw up a filtration system, green sand station. And we elected to give them $55,000 to do that. I think we need to pull that from them until we have other options. We have other options that we can go after. And I think if we leave that out there, who's to say that it might not get used? Because they do have the right to use the $55,000 to come up with a engineer drawing of a green sand filtration system. And we'll probably end up going with something different. I just think if we leave it out there, it's just gonna. So I don't know if somebody wants to make a motion to see about pulling that back until we get further studies or what. But I know David had made the motion at the last meeting for it.
Is that a recommendation?
Based on conversations with Mr. Shebel, he did mention that after his conversation with VDH that the green sand filter would not be an appropriate treatment process. I believe that he is still looking into that, but I think since then he's identified that this is not an appropriate use, and I wish that he were here tonight to explain that, because there's also been another memo sent over from the county in the amount of about $4,600 for another immediate fix. As you all know, we've had two spills over at the plant, and this is the most recent request from the county, who is currently the operator of our system, for an immediate fix that they said was brought to council back in 2023, prior to my time as manager. But previously, I think in the top of the memo, it says August 2023, that has not been acted on, and he's brought this to my attention for immediate action. So I wanted to make sure this got before you all. But I do think rescinding the $55,000 approval for the green sand filter design would be appropriate, but also in tandem approving this $4,600 request to fix the
automatic
SCADA.
dialer.
Yep, the automatic dialer.
Yeah.
Well, and I certainly thought that automatic dialer thing was fixed.
I did too.
But obviously.
They said it was taken care of.
Yeah,
Well-
and they said they had to get a separate line in because
Yeah.
it couldn't have another line.
Yeah, but I think
because they didn't know what to dial.
the issue was they needed that line to come in to get that system to work. Come to find out, all of the wires that come from all of the different components within the wastewater treatment plant have been severed. And so that system, that dialer was working, and it would call out, but nothing ever contacted it
To tell it to call out.
to tell it to call out. And so what they're saying now is, hey, we need to go through and just do away with that old system, and this is the new system,
Yeah, what
because
is
it
it?
would have
Okay.
given us the alarms that we needed in order to catch whatever's going wrong. So
Okay.
that's the reason for it.
Well, I make a motion that we hit the pause button or rescind that green filter monies and then appropriate the money to get this caller alarm system operational.
All right, so you're making two motions and is what you're saying. You got one to rescind the 55.
Well, I don't know if it needs to be two. It
Yeah,
could be two, it could be
okay.
one.
I got a motion to rescind the $55,000 that we authorized the county to use for engineering drawings of a green filter sand for our Alpha.
I'll second that.
I got a second by Randy. Discussion?
Yeah, just real quick again. So you did get correspondence from Mr. Shebel that there was no longer the appropriate action for that deal?
Mr. Shebel in a previous meeting said that he believes reverse osmosis is the only thing that will fix the issue. I do not have that in writing.
Right.
Okay. Well, I mean, I can go off that.
So that's why I said hit the pause button on that.
All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All right, now the second motion was to allocate funding of, $4,683.40 for the WWTP Supervisor Control and Data Acquisition System, is that correct? And Mr. Short, you made that motion?
I'll second it.
I got a second by Randy. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion carries. All right, now we go
One thing, Mayor, we had,
Yes, sir.
because we got all this rain coming down, a lot more than what we really need probably right now, but would it be advantageous for the town to pay a little bit of money and have some of this stuff pumped out and hauled away? And get some of them solids out of that plant? That's what we used to do.
I think, my understanding is the county is in charge of that and they're running it, and they were having some issues. There was some miscommunication between staff down there, but I think it's been taken care of, which was causing it. But
I think we'll talk more about that in closed session. So you want to read the closed session there, JC?
The council member want to read it?
All right.
I make a motion, we go into closed session pursuant to Virginia Code 2.2-3711A8 for consultation with legal counsel regarding the proposed MOU with the county for operations and management of the town water and sewer system.
All right, I got a motion by Mr. Stork. Do I have a second? Second by Randy again. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are in closed session. We'll take a 5-minute break, and I'll have to ask everybody who doesn't need to be here to please vacate. Thank you. Thank you all for coming out. Appreciate it. We know when you got us.
You go ahead.
All right, I'd like to bring us back into open session, please.
Mr. Mayor, we need a motion and a roll call vote to certify the only items discussed in closed session were those identified in the motion to convene the session as permitted under the Freedom of Information Act. We need a motion and a roll call.
All righty. Randy?
We need a motion.
I'll
I'm
make the
sorry, we need a
motion.
motion, excuse me.
Second.
I'll make the motion.
All right. David seconded. All right, Gene?
I certify.
Jeff? Dan?
I certify.
I certify.
I certify.
I certify.
And I certify as well. All right. Do I have any other discussion or do I have a motion to adjourn?
I have a motion to adjourn.
I second it.
Motion second, all right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Okay.